briefly. I know you can go for 15 minutes. I don't put a time
Hey,
limit
I
on
can
you.
lay it down and do it, man.
I'll give you 1 minute. Go
Just
ahead.
give me a heads up.
All right.
Well, it all basically boils down to just some common courtesy and how we interact with one another, particularly males and females, men and women. And, I come into a contact with a lot of people. I do my community service event every year in which I have an open call for women who desire
Well, I'm talking about, before you do that, I'm talking about the Kaepernick.
Oh, the Kaepernick.
Yeah, we'll come back.
Oh.
No. Just give me a 30-second synopsis on the whole Kaepernick discussion.
With respect to this issue, if people want to burn, their shoes, it's a free country, you're expressing your First Amendment right, by all means, burn it. But you know what? You're not hurting the Nike brand. You're not hurting the Nike organization. They're not making less money. Your whole protest is really futile. Now,
It is.
if this is going to describe your attitude from this moment going forward, that you don't participate, then that's another thing too. But I don't have a horse in this race. To me, it's one of those things that it really doesn't move me. If you don't support Nike and the Nike brand, fine. If you do, that's okay too. I think Nike, they have some marketing geniuses, on the staff, and they've already role played and game played how this thing is going to play out, and ultimately, in the end, they're going to win, and they're going to be quite successful.
And let's keep in mind, everyone, from a business standpoint, you have choices. From a business standpoint, you can buy whatever products you want to buy, right? You have money, you make so much money, you can spend on this particular product, on that particular product. And I think, Rick, you're right. I think from this perspective, and Jay, also from your standpoint, and Eric Brown, you're correct as well. At the end of the day, I personally think it was a great ad. I thought it talked about the best of people. It brings out the best in people. And I also think from a business standpoint, Nike is getting – so it was another value in terms of free advertising.
Yeah.
They're getting – because we're talking about it right now. So from a business standpoint, they are getting a lot of attention, and the sales are still up 31%. At the end of the day, enough said. All right, Mr. Rick, Ector. So let me properly introduce.
Just Rick, not right. Mr. Rick, just Rick.
Mr. Rick.
Right.
Yeah, Mr. No, this is Rick Ector. Let me give you a proper introduction. A couple weeks ago, Rick and I were on a TV program here in Detroit.
Yeah.
Called Let It Rip.
We let it rip.
Yeah, we let it rip. It was a Sunday morning here in the Motor City, and we got into it. One of the topics that we talked about, and by the way, hello to all our friends up on Facebook Live, and feel free to join the conversation, 313-778-7600. One of the conversations that we got into was a gun debate. It was a gun debate. We're not going to debate guns this morning,
right?
But listening to Rick, and I respect his opinion, didn't always agree with him, but that's the beauty of the First Amendment, right? We get the opportunity to talk about it.
And it's like all the other amendments, the Bill of Rights. Let's just deal with that. I mean, we all have these inalienable rights, and here's the thing, and it's fine if you don't even agree with exercising that right. Just don't try to take my right away. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and we respect it, and that's the beauty of America. Unfortunately, in this part, and sometimes in our country, people are espousing the fact that people are trying to take rights away, and I think we can all agree, generally speaking, that's not the case, right? And I think that so I respect that opinion that you don't want your right. I don't want my rights taken away.
Well, here's the thing.
Do you want your rights taken away?
No, not at all.
Believe it or not, there was a time when I wasn't a gun owner or a gun rights advocate. As a matter of fact, I was quite ambivalent, like I am with this Colin Kaepernick thing. It was kind of like noise in the background, but situations changed. I got robbed in my own driveway, and suddenly I had an epiphany. And the thing is that right that was not being exercised, it was still there, and I could go over and pick it up and take advantage of it.
And let me just clarify. I'm not saying I'm against people. They certainly have the right to own guns. Let me say, you're protected by the. So I want to make sure that's crystal clear. I'm not advocating either way. I'm just saying that Rick and I and other members of the panel that day. You can go back to Fox 2 News.
It's online.
It's online. If you want to watch the debate, we're not going to redo the entire debate. But it was an interesting debate because we talked about guns in the classroom. We talked about education and as it relates to guns and things like that. But Rick followed up to finish the introduction. He sent me a wonderful email. And we talked about in his email, he was talking about protecting women. And you referenced in the email to me about the whole Bishop Ellis situation with Ariana Grande recently, Aretha Franklin's funeral. Why don't you kind of take over the conversation from there and give the listeners your perspective, and then we'll kind of unpack about how you think women should be protected as well.
Well, when I looked at it and I saw the event unfold, it really just drove home the fact that, and I mean particularly men, we have to take a look at our behaviors sometimes. Sometimes we may take certain liberties and don't think much about them and the consequences as such. But looking at the activities in which I espouse and that I promote, one big, huge community service event that I do is that I have an open call for women to come out to an event that I do. This last May, I had 700 women take me up on a free shooting lesson, and it's free of charge, and we pay for everything. We get sponsors and promoters. The whole thing is to get women to show up because this is something that they may be able to use to protect themselves, and it may not be for everyone. But one of the things about firearms instruction and personal protection and teaching it, there might be some physical contact. I might need to, adjust your stance, or you might be holding the gun a certain way, and I may need to assist you with the orientation of your body along with the gun and to adjust your stance to reduce the amount of recoil that you may experience, things to make you have a more positive experience. But to do that, I will need to touch you. And see, here's the thing. You have men and women together, and, things can be misinterpreted if they're not talked about up front. Something's about to go down, and you need to talk about it like, hey. And so what you do is you say, hey, look, you're doing this. To have better results, you should do this. But I would like to have the opportunity to help you have more satisfactory results with your shooting and engage in this activity. Is it okay if I assist you with orienting your body to help you have more success and greater success? And all that is just simple communication and simple conversation and getting permission. And there's nothing unusual, strange, unexpected, which could lead to certain perceptions. And when you have men and women together, you got to be careful about your interaction, especially when we're talking about touching people and putting your hands on people.
If you want to join the conversation with Jay Alexander, Marcus Lee, and Rick Ector, area code is 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600 on 910 AM Superstation. Jay, go ahead.
So do you also, too, Rick, do you also train individuals for licenses and getting their CDL license and things like that?
Yeah, for sure. If someone has an active interest in taking on a more active role in their personal protection, that is getting a concealed pistol license so they can get a license to carry a gun anywhere that they can legally carry for, by all means, that's the number one thing. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Going back to this whole, deal with touching and not touching, man, it's like, it's just common courtesy, really. I mean, if we're not close and we don't really know each other or have a familial bond, then really it's inappropriate for me to touch you, especially in certain areas. Like me and Mark, we just met, but, a handshake, maybe a pat on the back. I start throwing my arm around his waist and pulling him into me. And,
whoa, all right. Now you're in my space, bro.
Time out.
My hand might start touching certain parts of his chest. I mean, it might create an unusual environment. And, and if it's going to involve something unconventional, then maybe we should have, a conversation, and it doesn't take a whole lot to do that.
And especially now, we know that the Me Too movement has really taken off in the last several years. It's been around for a long time, but it's been highlighted. It's been spotlighted. And I think, Jay and I talked earlier in the conversation about the situation, the Tigers broadcasters, and if you had a situation like that in the workforce, in the workplace, how that should be handled. Certainly that was handled inappropriately by both of them. They both have been suspended. So now in the workplace, or whether it's in the workplace or not, you have to be very sensitive and careful and respect, I think, a person's privacy, their space, and to your point about where you touch and how you touch. people, in this particular case, women as well. It goes both ways.
Well, I mean, you got to take all those things into account, and sometimes it's cultural, and sometimes it's a gender thing. But, you know, especially in the corporate environment, you know, you have to be careful as to how you speak to someone, what questions you ask. I mean, in some cultures, in some companies, you can't even tell a person of the opposite gender, gee, you look nice today. You know, man, you look really good, or hey, you know, your hair looks nice. I mean, some of those things can be misinterpreted. I know some people are like, man, it's crazy, but yeah, it really has gotten that way with political correctness in some fashions, and some people think it's gotten out of hand. But as it relates to this whole touching thing, man, if you and I or me and some other woman in some professional organized activity, if we're there, you know, if it's not a handshake or maybe a hand on the shoulder, you know, touching, you know, unless it's authorized or you have some pre-existing relationship that pre-authorizes that, nah, you don't touch people. You don't do that.
What do you think, Detroit? Area code 313-778-7600. You know, Rick's giving his perspective. Jay is giving you his as well, and I've given you my perspective. We want to hear from you. What are your thoughts as we continue, certainly with the spotlight on human interaction and between men and women, and all these reports are surfacing about inappropriate touching? What are your thoughts? And we'd love to hear from you. So, Rick, are you advocating giving women guns to protect themselves?
If women have a desire to take on a more active role in their personal protection, and here's the argument I get in with the anti-gunners. They think that I'm trying to make people learn how to use a gun or make people take a gun or make people get gun training. No. If you have this desire and you want to do this, by all means, I support you, and I support that decision so much so I will make arrangements for you to come to one of these free training sessions and learn more about it. You know, and quite frankly, there are some people who may try it and not actually like it. It's like one of my favorite childhood stories, you know, green eggs and ham. You know, try it. I know it looks crazy. You know what? Just try it. Yeah. You know, you might like it.
That's right.
But you might not. And it's not for everybody. There's a lot of things that go along with this whole carrying a gun thing. Just the legal end of it. I mean, if you don't handle business correctly, you could find yourself in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very quickly.
Absolutely, Rick. I got two questions. One, what's the percentage of women that comes in to see you and to get that particular training? And two, tell the audience out there, you know, how can they get in contact with you and with the services that you offer?
Well, you know, and years ago, you know, I've been a firearms trainer for 13 years now, man. Classes typically were predominantly all men, you know, all male. Nowadays, man, the class is at a minimum 50% women, and I think that's just due to some of the things that we're seeing play out in the community. When you look at the news reports and you hear about, oh, a woman's body was found or a woman was raped, you know, you hear crime stats and, you know, based on, you know, who's doing the reporting, you know, like a lot of headway has been made, you know, what they say about robberies going down, murders going down. But there's one stat that's not going down, and that's sexual assault and rape, you know, and it's kind of like the crime that no one's talking about. And as a man, me and you, we can do things like we come out, you know, go out and come home and get out of our vehicle and some vehicle pass by or something. You're not thinking about being raped. I mean, there might be something else going on, but no, they're thinking about, oh, man, I might actually be violated. But if anyone has an interest in learning more about the class, the training, taking a more active role in their personal protection, man, it's really easy to get a hold of me. Rick, R-I-C-K, Ector, E-C-T-O-R. I'm on every social media platform, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I have a YouTube channel with over 2,000 videos that I independently produced, and all of my media appearances, including me and Mark Lee on Let It Rip Weekend a couple of weeks ago. If y'all haven't seen that, y'all should check that out. We got into it. We had some fun, though. We got into it. It was my first time meeting him, and the first time him meeting me. So there's a dynamic there. And you're like, oh, You know, this guy here, right.
I was like, who is this dude? I said, we had Charlie Langton and what's her name, Mario Lewis.
Right,
I said, okay, to step in between us. I don't know. I'm just kidding. We had a great time. We would encourage you to check that out because we got into an interesting discussion about firearms. And again, we respect everyone's opinion. That's the beauty of America. I have one slightly different perspective when it comes to the educational field because I certainly one of the things I do is I'm an adjunct professor at a local university, and then certainly Rick has his perspective as well. But we're not gonna tell you what our perspective is. We want you to go back and
that's
watch.
That's another show, man.
That's definitely another show.
It sure is. It sure is.
That's definitely another show. I gotta tell you that was fun though. But let's kind of go back to: are there statistics, Rick, that will say? Do we know specifically if, is violence actually, does it decrease by virtue of the fact that people have more guns in their hands?
Well, overall, if you look at just raw data, the numbers that come out, annually, overall violent crime has been on a steady decline. I mean, it's definitely not something that's a growing phenomenon. The thing that a lot of people that's driving a lot of paranoia about guns and crime is when we have a mass shooting event. And obviously, there's a lot of different opinions from different people, from different organizations as to what we can do to stop those things from happening. And, to your point, you're an educator, you're at a university, and there's a conversation there, and there's conversations outside of universities and schools. Obviously when these events happen, however infrequent and rare they might be statistically, when they go down and when they happen, it's going to make a splash and it's going to get a lot of coverage because there's a lot of lives that are impacted. It's kind of like air travel, Air travel is safe. I will jump on an airplane in a minute to go from here to some conference on the other side of the country without a second thought because it's really safe. But if there's a disturbance, if there's a mechanical issue, something goes down with that plane and it goes down, it's going to be bad for everybody on that single plane. I mean, it's the one plane out of thousands, that take off and land successfully every year. But when something bad happens, we got to do the post-mortem and figure out what happened and do the hand-wringing and figure out what we can do to stop this from reoccurring.
What are your thoughts? Feel free to call and talk to Rick and give him your questions, your perspective on what he's proposing and advocating. And certainly we're talking here about, women and protecting our women and heck, protecting men. We're also talking about the inappropriate behavior, inappropriate touching that's continuing to get more under the spotlight with individuals, with the things that have come out over the years. I mean, we are living, Jay, I think, in unprecedented times here where obviously with social media, all you got to do is you can take a picture now and it's posted. You can certainly post something on Facebook and it's all of a sudden it's out there and it's shared. And some of that could be, not true. And I don't want to use the phrase that 45 uses. I'm not going to say that, but it can be certainly not true. But yet, once it goes out there, it can certainly damage you in terms of social media. So times have changed in the sense that I think the spotlight is that much more brighter because of the advent of social media and non-traditional forms of communicating with people.
Absolutely. And what it has done, it has taken an industry and broadened it or made it more vague, I would say, right? Because you have this individual reporting over here, or you have a live camera, like a police pull over somebody. Every time I see a police officer pull over somebody, I see somebody else filming, right? You got the kids burning the shoes, so they filming on their backyard. They burning the shoes, so it's all on social media. But it's all so you can get all these likes. It's all so because you feel good if you get a bunch of likes instead of me talking to you and you feeling good. I feel good because I got 300 likes, and if I don't get 300 likes, I want to kill myself.
And that's why I appreciate this conversation with Rick, because we're talking about it. And I think, and you're right, man. They make an excellent point. We post something on social media. Okay, yes, we're listening, but we're not pointing our fingers at anybody. We're simply saying, how many times have you posted something? And then you go look to see how many likes you got.
Oh, man, that's just human nature, man. If you make a comment or you write something or invest some part of you into something, you want feedback. And obviously, the more feedback, the more social currency that gives you.
But here's the deal. Liking something is not the feedback. The feedback to me is the actual engagement of that conversation.
Oh man, we disagree. If I put something out there on my page and I only if I only get like 3 likes, I'm like, okay, somebody showed me some pity love out of pity. If I put something up and I don't get any likes, I'm like, oh man, I'm going to a little funk. I'm like, man, I just totally misread this.
Liking you because they don't agree with what you're saying, right?
But let me tell you, if I put something out there and it's like 100 people, a couple hundred people, or it goes viral, I've had a few go viral, man, and people start sharing, and it's like 5,000 people, shared something.
But people will share something that they can relate to that's relevant to them.
Yeah, you touch the nerve, man, and you move them. Let me tell you, if you can move someone, man, you can make them do anything.
313-778-7600. We're laughing, but we're also having a serious conversation because we think it's important to have this conversation. We have an open dialogue, and that's the beauty of the First Amendment, is that we can agree, we can disagree, but as long as we're having a dialogue, and I think that's the important thing here.
No doubt.
I post certain things. I get a few likes, and sometimes I get a lot of likes, and then I post something on LinkedIn. I get a lot of views. I have quite a few followers, so people will track what I say and do. I don't necessarily post something just for likes.
Well, I don't think that people. There are some people that do, because you'll have like some people, now just for lack of use a euphemism, they're models, right? And they'll put up certain pictures, and obviously it's an ego stroke, okay, am I this or am I that? But, outside of, that, I think people have a vested interest in their opinions and what they think, and when they throw it out there into the general population, what type of feedback. There's a certain amount of social currency that goes with that, especially if you can gain some popularity with your views. You might end up having a radio show or something.
Yeah, but in that same token too, Rick, though, it's you have a business, right? Yeah. And you offer something, so you want feedback. But you're talking about the normal Joe Q public individual, young, self-esteemless, if you will, type person, and they need Facebook, they need all these social media outlets to get all these likes. And if they don't get these likes, they're down in the dumps. That completely destroys their mood and who they are, right? Well, I mean, that's the only issue that I have with it, right?
You can extrapolate that further and take it off of Facebook. I mean, we all have a deep down desire to be accepted, loved, admired, and given positive feedback. It's just the digital equivalent. I mean, there's nothing wrong with going to an organization and doing, say, a speech. I do talks and speeches for a lot of different groups or whatever, and you know what? I actually thrive on the feedback. Well, one form of feedback might be applause. I'll tell you the thing that I absolutely would hate is to do a presentation and I get absolutely 0 questions.
Right.
I agree with that.
If I get 0 questions, that means I either nailed it and I've given you the last word on the topic at hand, or you know what? I completely lost you. There was a mismatch of the topic married to the people in attendance, and I totally bombed.
Well, I think the 3 of us give a lot of talks. I do a lot of public speaking in Detroit, across the country. I know, Jay, you've done some talks. And I agree. I mean, I love the feedback. You know what? And one of the things when I do give talks and I give speeches, I love to interact with the audience. I don't like to talk one way.
Right.
To me, it's got to be an engagement. Yes. And I think, and to your point, I agree with you, Rick. I think social media, and I agree with Jay as well, social media in its best format should be a form of engagement.
Well, that's what it's all about. I mean,
but some people don't use it as engagement. They just don't.
Well, the thing is that it's so easy and too easy to just put a like button, push a like button. If you look at an average post, you'll see more likes and maybe only just a handful of comments.
Some people will post in our closing 15, 20 seconds. I'm going to give you one more chance for your website. But some people will simply post, "It's sunny outside," and they get 300 likes. That's it.
Well, I mean, it depends on who it is and who it is and who's saying it, what type of popularity they have. That'll drive a lot of things, too.
Before we go, Rick, seriously, in all sincerity, what's your website?
Website is DetroitCCW.com. I'm going to tell you, if you just search on my name, and it's very easy, Rick, R-I-C-K, Ector, E-C-T-O-R. I'm everywhere.
Yes, you are.
Yes, I'm everywhere. Just Google me, right? And I tell people that, and they think I'm ego stroking. No, I've been in the media and been on the internet and for years. So just Google me.
We're up against the clock. Hang around for a moment. We appreciate you being patient. James, we know you on the call. Hang loose for a second. We'll be right back from this commercial break on 910 AM Superstation with Marcus Lee and Jay Alexander.
AM Superstation will be broadcasting live from the Chevrolet Detroit Grand Prix, presented